You are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Seder. To support this show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Associate Professor at Seattle University School of Law, Dean Spade, author of Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next. Also on the program, a year after George Floyd's killing, no police reform legislation to sign. Blinken is in Israel meeting with Netanyahu, vows relief to rebuild Gaza after Israel bombed it, and wants a consulate in Jerusalem. DOJ is fighting the full release of a memo shielding Trump from prosecution. And on the Hill and at the White House, the infrastructure talks with the Republicans on the brink of collapse. And that's good news. New variant found in India, spreading now in Britain. Texas poised to allow unlicensed carrying of handguns by just about anybody. Debt limit suspension deadline looms. The real question is, will it kill the filibuster? And good news for me. New York schools will be going full-time in the fall. Also, good news for other people. It's the largest school district in the country. Florida becomes the 23rd state to sabotage workers as their unemployment benefits are slashed. Lastly, D.C. Attorney General files an antitrust suit against Amazon. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. Joining me, as always, Emma Vigeland. Emma, how are you today?
I am well. How about you, Sam?
I am also well. As you'll note, my voice is returning ever so slightly. I've not cleared out all the pollen that apparently has been resting in my throat, but I certainly feel better, and voice is getting a little stronger. That's good news. And I have to say, I am buoyed by the idea that we are very close. I think the deadline for the infrastructure bill was in about a week, but we're already starting to see activity on the Democratic side preparing for taking this infrastructure bill through reconciliation so we get more legislation passed, more spending passed, and really, frankly, investments in making the country more durable and sustainable. We have a lot more to go, but this dance with the Republicans has been about as fruitless as one could imagine. They started, just to give you an update, the last time we were talking about this, really, in any measurable way, Shelley Moore Capito, I guess, and they were throwing around numbers, like what they would respond to the $1.9 trillion infrastructure bill that Biden was proposing. And they started saying things like maybe $600 billion, maybe $500 billion, maybe $700 billion. Their latest offer is $200 billion. They have literally lopped off 2/3 of their initial proposal in terms of what they were going to negotiate with Joe Biden with. Joe Biden countered the other day with $1.7 trillion. So they are $1.5 trillion apart now. The Republicans are going to come back one more time, but hopefully we have now satiated the gods of bipartisanship who apparently need the Democrats to do a dance with the Republicans for weeks on end, knowing that the Republicans are just going to sit there and sort of rock back and forth. It's like when I was like really bad, school dances, like in elementary school, where, half the kids just sit there on the sides, just looking at other kids.
Yes,
dancing.
sure.
The other half just sit on the dance floor, just sort of rock back and forth. That's basically what the.
Well, I mean, Biden's like weakening the bill by giving a blood sacrifice to the bipartisanship gods, essentially, right? Like he, slices his hand, bleeds, says, "Will you take this? Will you take this?" And then no, I mean, we're lucky they're so extreme. We're lucky they're, negotiating with essentially a phantom. That's helpful for Biden's purposes, even though, of course,
Well, I mean, that's true. Let me just say this.
Yes.
That was the thing that saved Social Security during the Obama-Biden years. Obama
was like, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's privatize it. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't so much privatized.
Cut it. Yeah.
It was cutting the COLAs, essentially, recalculating the cost of inflation for adults. And so the fact that what we called them Tea Partiers, they're just Republicans, said, no way, that's what saved Social Security. And within a year or two, you had the Democratic caucus in the Senate voting to increase Social Security. But this is Capito in April. Here's a quote. She was asked why $600 to $800 billion was the sweet spot. And she said, this is in April. It's just a ballpark figure. It may not even be that much. I don't know. I just kind of threw it out as a talking point. And they're not serious is the bottom line. And so the quicker we get through this stage, the better. They will pass the $1.9 trillion. They're going to have to go through reconciliation, which is going to take a little time, but we'll see that. I would imagine now, by mid-July. And then at the end of July, we're going to see we're going to get to the debt ceiling. I know folks remember this from the Obama years. It only comes up during, Democratic presidencies. I mean, it literally comes up during all presidencies, but we only talk about it in the news because it only becomes an issue, when the Republicans don't have the presidency. That's when they start to vote against it en masse. We borrow money, essentially put it on the functional equivalent of a credit card, except for we also own the credit card company as a U.S. government. And there is a pro forma, essentially, vote to raise the debt ceiling, which allows us to pay off the bills that we have incurred, essentially. And, or allows us to take on more debt, which allows for the expenditures that we've already, expended. This will come up at the end of July. It is extremely close, in the Senate. Folks know this. And so that may be where we see the filibuster reform on the must pass legislation raising the debt ceiling. Now, there's other things that could be done, but conventional wisdom is that we need to pass this bill without going insolvent, without essentially the U.S. defaulting on its obligations for the first time ever on treasuries. And so that could very well be when we see the filibuster get modified, nuked, we're not sure. That could be the moment. And so they're going to want to get this infrastructure bill out of the way. Then we go into hopefully a filibuster-free period of time. It's possible. And pass some more legislation. Like, for instance, hopefully we will see some police reform bill sent to Joe Biden, and hopefully, although I would imagine highly unlikely, it will be even remotely sufficient. But here is Brian Kilmeade on the anniversary of the killing of George Floyd. Here is Kilmeade sort of saying that, sometimes it's not the crime, but rather the response, which is really the danger to society.
19 children in Minneapolis have been shot this year, an increase of 171% over the same period in 2020. The relatives wonder where the protesters are. Why ain't nobody mad about a 10-year-old, my grandson, fighting for his life, asked Cherie Jennings, also another grandmother at May 17th mayoral event, because a cop didn't shoot him. That is the answer. So right now, as horrific as George Floyd's death was, our reaction's been worse.
Brian, let me tell you right now what's amazing. The George Floyd death was horrific. But what is amazing is all this crime in Democratic cities. The biggest mouths who are complaining about this racial injustice. In Democratic cities where people of color are running the government, you have black on black crime, you have attacks on police officers, and where's Al Sharpton? Where's Black Lives Matter? Do you ever see them when there's black on black crime?
There it is, of course, the problem with George Floyd's killing by the state, by the people that we pay to supposedly keep people safe. The real problem with that is that we now have black on black crime.
It's just like so lazy. They've been doing it for same black on black crime. I mean, decades at this point. This is what the talking point's been, and it doesn't matter that violent crime, I think recently there has been some sort of spike, maybe due to the fact that people were in economic desperation, at least in the short term, but on the whole, on the average, has been on the decline for many, many years, murders, etc. The Democrat cities, the Democrat-run cities don't get credit for that. When that happens, it's only just, to gin this up.
Well, if folks are so concerned there, I would suggest let's reorient the police to where their only job is to solve murders. Let's put it that way. We can start with there because we have, only about 20% of the murders in this country are actually ever solved anyways. But it is an interesting take. Not interesting. But it is, like you say, a banal take that they deploy all the time, which is, why are you complaining about the fact that we have the paid agents of the state killing people needlessly? Why are you complaining about that when there's other people killing other people? That is what that breaks down to. The idea that we could do anything materially about violence amongst civilians without first addressing the fact that the people who are supposed to protect civilians are actually responsible for killing them. I mean, good luck with that.
Yeah, the increase in the crime rate could be troubling. Also troubling is the increase in the things that lead to crime rate. And we should address those.
Indeed. I mean, and look, I'm quite convinced that COVID itself, the going through a pandemic is bound to have these type of knock-on effects, which isn't to say that it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. But we clearly, the millions upon millions of dollars spent on the police obviously are not having any impact. And so we need to reform the police in some fashion. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back in just a moment. We'll be talking to Dean Spade, Associate Professor of Law at Seattle University and author of Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next. We'll be right back after this. Folks, just a reminder, it is your support